It's time for The Story Behind the Person, featuring lively, in-depth conversation with compelling guests from our community. And here is our host, Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Hello and welcome to this episode. My guest today is Doug McLatchy, better known as Mr. Hockey. We'll learn all about how he's accumulated a massive collection of sports memorabilia and his wealth of knowledge of the sporting world. His life is interesting, and perhaps we can get him to share some of his hidden secrets. We'll be right back after these messages.
Top care with top stylists. Book your next hair appointment with Port Perry's award-winning hair salon, Rosario Greco Styles. The hair experience you deserve. Book today. Call 905-985-0099.
Welcome back. My guest today is Doug McLatchy. Doug is also known as Mr. Hockey. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ron.
So the term Mr. Hockey, obviously you've got a lot of information, knowledge, and memorabilia from the not only hockey but also the sports industry, right?
True.
So before we get into that, let's take it back a little bit to your background. You're born in New Brunswick, I'm told?
Yes, I am. Weldon, New Brunswick.
Weldon?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where that is.
20 people in there.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
a big metropolis.
It's been a sad day when you left.
Yeah.
And you got a job working for the foundry, right? And what exactly were you doing for them?
I was sand mixing.
Okay.
And what they did is they had people that did molds.
Okay.
And they were professional people that they would make different products for different machinery.
Right.
And they would mold all day.
Right.
And they would sculpture, I guess you would call it.
Okay.
And
are we talking metal molds here, or concrete, or metal?
Yeah, metal,
okay.
yeah. So there would be basically 3 graves. That's what they would look like.
Yeah.
Mounds of sand. And my friend and I would go, and they poured iron in them.
Okay.
And they would sit there for an hour and a half. And we would go in there and have tongs and pull them out.
Okay.
Pull all the hot iron out. And then we would mix the sand all up and put some oil in it, so it had a different consistency.
So they could do it again, kind of thing.
Do it again in the morning. And then we got $5 for that.
Wow.
And
that's a lot of money back then.
14 years old and way back then.
So this was part-time? You were going to school at the same time?
Yeah, going to school. Yeah.
So you said you do this at night for the next morning. So you went to school during the day, you did this in the evenings and nights?
But it would only take me a couple hours.
Okay.
So it was no big deal.
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to think part-time jobs I had. None of them were at night, that's for sure.
No, after school.
Yeah. And then and your father was in the property management business. Your mom was in the restaurant business. Is that correct?
And my dad was in the war.
Okay.
And my brother was born before the war, and I was born after the war.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's the only 2 times they had sex or not.
I'm not going there. I'm not going there. I was post-war. So
yes.
So then you moved to Preston, which is now a part of Cambridge, correct? It was Preston, Galton, Hespeler, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and is that where you went to high school?
Yes, I went to high school, Preston High School, grade 10, 11, and 12.
Now I know just before we went on the air, you mentioned that when you made all this money, these $5 things, the day you turned 16, you bought a car.
Absolutely. And I went from being a nobody into the most popular person in the school.
I guess. I can imagine. At 16 with what kind of car was it?
56 Chevy.
Wow.
$350.
Really?
And of course, gas was 32 cents a gallon back then.
Right, that's
like
right.
That.
Yeah.
But I never really paid for it, so I didn't pay much attention how much the gas was.
That's right, everybody else paid for it.
Everybody piled in my car, and we'd go out and look for trouble, maybe.
Yeah, God, I remember those days. I mean, obviously I'm much, much younger than you, but I remember I remember insurance was $180 a year.
Yeah.
Gosh, those days are gone.
Oh my God.
So then you decided, enough of Cambridge, I'm going to Toronto, the big city.
Exactly. And my brother worked for IBM.
Oh, okay.
And so I had a bit of an in.
Right.
And he said, well, why don't you come and work for IBM? They're looking for, people to work. And I said, well, sure, why not? I was living in Preston with my parents.
Right.
And so I went to Toronto for an interview. And but anyway, I started there, and I was working on the line on selector typewriters.
Oh, that's the one with the ball on,
Yeah,
right?
the
That
ball,
you see.
yeah,
I remember that.
So I could take them apart and put them together, and
Yeah.
until a few years ago, I still had one.
Now, you've been collecting since you were very young, right?
Right.
Even before you moved to Toronto and IBM, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
And what would you be collecting? What sort of stuff?
Well,
would you
initially, I started off, I was 8 or 9 years old. And the Toronto Star down in the east wouldn't be the Toronto Star, it'd be the weekend magazine, Telegram.
Right. I remember that.
They actually came to your house and delivered the paper.
Wow, what a concept.
Because they didn't have any stores that sold them.
Right.
With a little community. So I would wait, I would wait at the door every Saturday morning to see what hockey player was in the weekend magazine.
They did the big picture featuring a hockey player,
full-page
right?
picture. I was so excited when I come and there was Tim Horton or Johnny Bauer or
Carl Brewer.
Yeah, Carl Brewer or any of them. Yeah, or Bobby Hull, right?
Yeah.
And it started in 54.
Right.
I don't think I started collecting them until 57, 58.
Okay.
But then I went back and
So you cut them all out and...
I cut them all out.
Wow.
Well, my aunt lived in Weldon as well.
Okay.
So she was...
One of the 20 people that was there.
Yeah. An old maid school teacher. Maybe I shouldn't say old maid, but back then we didn't think about stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I used to go stay at her house.
Right.
And she lived with her brother. That was a strange situation, but neither one of them were married. And it was an old farmhouse.
It's a family show, Doug.
Yeah. And in the attic, they kept every paper from 1850, I think, till about, when I went there. So I would spend all my time in the attic going through all these newspapers.
Yeah, that would be
And I collected every one of them. Could you believe it? Because they had every single weekend magazine and Star Weekly.
What a great haul that would be.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
I was,
you must have been in heaven.
Oh, heaven is not the word. I couldn't believe it. And then, I would spend 3 hours up there, go down, and my Aunt Estelle would be boiling fresh blueberries, which she had picked at 6 o'clock in the morning down by the railway tracks. And little Dougie would go down there and have blueberry pancakes and blueberry muffins. And
God, my mouth is drooling now, you know that.
Oh, my God. It was just unbelievable.
That's amazing. That's
great memories for,
no kidding.
For a kid.
No kidding. So IBM, you progressed your career. You did a lot of traveling with them, right, throughout North America?
And they sent me to these different places, and you never worked on one product very long.
Okay.
So there was a few times I worked on like robotics and stuff.
Okay.
And I actually had to go down to the Hughes Corporation in LA to learn how to do robotics.
Oh.
And because I was in the education department at that time, I not only had to learn how to work it, I had to learn how to program it, and then I had to learn how to fix it.
And how to teach it.
And how to teach it. Okay.
Yeah.
I would come back and we basically had a team of people, video people and writing people and stuff like that. So I would kind of manage that, and but I was in game too. I was teaching. So I would be teaching, 22, 23-year-old kids or 45-year-old adults. So it was quite an experience.
And you found of all the places you traveled, North Durham was your favorite? Because you met somebody, right, and decided to settle down.
Yes, I met my wife, Darlene, roller skating in Kitchener, Ontario.
Okay.
And
so you're a roller skater too, are you? Well, I guess if they call you Mr. Hockey, I guess Mr. Roller Skate would be
Mr. Roller Skate wouldn't fit on the plate. Actually, I was the president of a roller skating club, believe it or not, and we would travel all over the place. And there was a place in Kitchener called Bingham Park. Okay. And the first day that I got my new car, and it was a 340 Dodge Dart Swinger, all souped up.
Okay.
Right? And I drove to Bingham Park, of course.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Darlene.
Wonderful. The rest is history.
Fate seems to be a big part of my life. So
everybody's,
that was one of them,
I think so. you collected everything you could wherever you could. You branched from hockey into baseball cards and football and all kinds of paraphernalia, right?
The only reason I did that, I think, is opportunity.
Right.
Because I got to know a lot of collectors. I got to know a lot of players. I got to know a lot of people that were interested in that type of thing.
And you're buying and selling now at this point, right? Like you're
mostly selling.
Okay, so
but
you're
sometimes buying.
Yeah, so you're kind of making a few bucks on this.
Trying
project,
to,
right?
yeah.
But then you got the job of cataloging for one of the Star Weekly or the Telegram Weekly.
Yes, sorry. Harold Barkley was the photographer for the Toronto Star from about 1946 till 1975, I guess.
Right.
And I got in touch with his daughter, Sharon, and brother, Rob.
Right.
And however it happened, I don't know. It kind of blurs into it. So anyway, they said, would you come over and look at my dad's boxes full of what have you? Yeah. So I said, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, this would be great, right? So anyway, I went down and I went into her mom's basement, and it was like you wouldn't believe, full of boxes.
Like a museum.
And a museum. And they had no idea about it, right? Even though they grew up with it.
Of course.
They weren't as good as Harold. Harold was the first person to put strobe lights in the gardens.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why his pictures were so fantastic.
So strobe lights are like flashlights, so they only went off when you took a picture? Is that kind of?
I guess so,
yeah. Yeah, interesting.
And he still had the strobe lights in the basement, which was kind of funny,
So he must have had a lot of stuff there.
Oh, you wouldn't believe what I was 3 weeks pretty much steady there.
Really?
Luckily, I had retired, so...
you retired from IBM?
IBM,
okay.
I did that, and I was 46 years old. I was quite fortunate to do that.
Commendable.
And that allowed me to spend not the rest of my life, but most of my retired life doing what I love to do.
Okay.
And of course, they were pretty, they were glad that I did this because it wasn't just hockey, it was baseball, it was horse racing, it was everything that he did.
So you went through all of Harold Barkley, all of his stuff?
Right.
His name?
Louis Jacques.
Louis Jacques, yes, from the Telegram, right?
From the Telegram.
Right.
And that was my love. When I first started collecting these, the Telegram pictures were the killer for me. Right?
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so what I did, I went to try to find out where these pictures were, the originals. You had them on paper, but I eventually got the original transparencies.
Really?
I contacted Louis Jacques' brother, who lived in Switzerland.
Oh my!
Wrote him a letter and said that I was looking to get rights for these pictures.
Right.
And he says, and I wasn't expecting to hear back from him in Switzerland.
And you did.
And I did. He calls me.
I'm going to pause you right there because we need to carry this on because I'm really intrigued now, but we do need to take a commercial break. So please stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
It's about your brand, and at PP Print, we can help create promotional products and apparel that will put you above your competition. PP Print, more than just print.
At Voss, your independent grocer, it's all about hometown living and shopping. Owned and operated by Port Perry's own Terry and Christine Voss, the independent grocer carries many local items to support our town and its residents.
Welcome back. My guest today is Doug McLatchy, otherwise known as Mr. Hockey. Doug, welcome back. Just before the break, you were telling us about Louis Jacques, who was a photographer for the Telegram, who used to do the hockey pictures and the sports photos for the Telegram.
Correct, yes.
So you contacted his brother in Switzerland. Carry on with that story because it's interesting.
Not expecting to get a reply back, but...
and what was your reason for calling him?
I wanted to buy the rights for the pictures.
Okay, all right.
And what I did was asked him about that, and he says, well, I don't really own the rights. Louis had a daughter. And I said, oh, really? So he gave me her phone number, and she lived in Alaska.
Oh, my gosh.
And I says, I'm going from Switzerland to Alaska.
Oh, there's mountains in both, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I got in touch with her, and she was more than willing to give me the rights to the collection.
Really?
So I paid her a fee. I'm not going to say how much.
No,
but,
that's doesn't mean anything in today's dollars anyways, right?
Yeah. And she said that all I ask is that you do it in a way that's not going to, make Louis look bad and stuff like that.
Of course.
And those were my favorite pictures. And the clarity in them were just unbelievable.
Yeah. So these were only hockey?
No, there was football as well, and some baseball. And I had to find the original transparencies.
Okay.
And there was a place down in Toronto called Legends of the Game.
Yes, I know it well. Yeah,
and Wally
it's on King Street, I think, right?
He was the owner, and he had gotten these original transparencies 30 years ago from somebody that worked at the Telegram.
Right.
And I had been going down there, and he was telling me all about this, and he showed them to me, but he wouldn't sell them to me. And then one day, he said to me, Doug, he says, I'm going to sell you these transparencies because I'm getting out of the business.
Wow.
He says, you're the only person that I want to have them. And he says, oh, great. So he said, $5,000. I said, ow,
And when was this? When was this?
This was 30 years ago, I guess, or something like that.
Yep.
And anyway, he said, well, let's make a deal.
Okay.
He bought pictures from me to sell for autograph deals and stuff like that.
Right.
He says, give me $3,000 worth of pictures and $2,000. That made the $5,000. Well, the $3,000 worth of pictures would cost me maybe $300.
Okay.
So that was a pretty good deal for me.
Very good deal.
So 300 and some odd transparencies, not only from the Weekend magazine, but from the Barclay collection too.
Right.
Because back then, the photographers used to trade pictures back and forth, and that's why some of them got lost.
Right, of course.
Right. So I was in my glory.
So you had all these photographs, these transparencies, some that you had paid, and I'm sure $2,000 then was a lot more than it is now.
Well, it's more now, yeah.
So how did you make money with these transparencies, or did you plan to make money with them?
Not initially, no. Okay. I was a collector. I was a collector of everything,
Right.
And
must have a big house.
Yeah, of course. And one day I started a business after I retired from IBM, and I needed something to do.
Right.
Because when I first retired, Darlene and we traveled for a year. I got sick of that. I don't know if that's possible, but I did.
Okay.
And
you're talking to a travel guy here,
travel,
that, right?
Yeah. And anyway, I started a business.
Okay.
And I got some partners, and I started selling these things.
And how does that happen? Do you put an ad in the paper, or do you go to trade shows, or you just phone people up?
Yes, I go to trade shows.
Okay.
And back in 25 years ago, they had a sports card show at the airport.
Okay.
And there would be 150 dealers.
Really?
So it would cost me maybe $200 for a table for 3 days.
And then you buy and sell, right?
Yeah, buy and sell, yeah. So I went and I had a table there, you were there for 3 full days, the first day from 11 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night.
That's always fun.
So I probably couldn't do that now.
No.
But all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And because I had different stuff and new stuff, I did really well on it. I made a lot of money on it. Right. I shouldn't say a lot of money, but back then it was a lot of money.
Enough to survive.
And
enough to put some food on people.
Yeah, and I got to know all the dealers, and we would trade back and forth, and it was fun. I loved doing it. I was exhausted at the end, but it was fun. And of course you get to know all the dealers, and you trade with them, do wholesale pricing with them, and autograph. They bought pictures for them to autograph. Right.
So tell me, you were saying before we started the show that you also did a stint at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and it's an interesting way to get a job there. Why don't you take us through that?
Well, it was more, I was working for IBM at the time, and of course everybody knew that I was the hockey guy, right?
Right.
And somebody came up to me and they said, you have, there was an ad in the paper, I can't remember if it was a Star probably, and they said, wanted hockey person to help at the Hockey Hall of Fame. Well, initially, it was just a, volunteer thing, and I did it part-time, but I had to, interview for me.
Right.
So I went to see Joseph Romaine, and he was the head of the Hall of Fame at the time.
Okay. And now, is this the Hall of Fame on BCE Place there on Front
Yes,
and
but at the time it was at the, where they have the exhibition.
Oh, okay.
Exhibition grounds.
Okay,
right?
all right.
So, I got free passes
Of course.
For the exhibition every year too, so that was kind of cool. So anyway, Joseph, I came in and I asked him, how many applicants have you had? And he said, 58. And I said, 58? Oh. I says, well, that's not that many. Well, I thought it was, but I says, well, you won't have to look any further. I'm your guy, right? He looks at me and kind of strange, But I figured
You're a little cocky there, were you?
I was a little cocky because I knew some of the people that had applied for it, and I knew I was much better than them. So Joseph said to me, we have this picture nobody can identify.
Right.
And he brought the picture up and showed me. And he said, nobody can identify this. And I said, well, it's a certain guy, Joe Hall. And he said he actually played for the Montreal Canadiens in 1928.
Right.
And he was with Calgary in the WHL.
That must have impressed him.
Really impressed him.
Yeah, really.
And then he said, how do I know this is true? I says, I hope that you know who this is.
Right.
You ask me a question, you don't know who it is. So I had to find a picture of this guy to prove to him that I knew who it was. So anyway, I says, do you have any pictures of the 28 Montreal Canadiens? And sure enough, he did, and I pointed to him where it was.
Right.
And he says, oh, I have another problem. He has a stack of pictures this high. And he said, we don't know who any of them are. And so I said, yeah, I went through them all, and I identified them all. He says, okay, you can start on Monday.
Wow. That's great. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
It's very impressive that you would know all those people, too. I mean,
Well, I had no other life than that.
Yeah. So I'm told that your basement, you have a dressing room.
Right.
You have a hockey rink or partial hockey rink.
Yes. Yeah.
Is your house like the size of Maple Leaf Gardens? Is that sort of how you're set up?
Oh, you've heard of the word miniature?
Yeah.
Well, it's a scaled down size, but
so tell me about the dressing room. So what would you have in there?
I would have. I made it so that it looked like the 1951 Toronto Maple Leaf dressing room when Bill Barocco scored the overtime goal. And it had sweaters, autographed sweaters in it. It painted blue. It had, the wording above the, exactly the way it looked. Because I had a picture from the Maclean's magazine in 1951 with the players in the room.
Right, so you knew exactly what it looked like.
Made it look like that.
Oh, cool.
So,
so what kind of people would you invite down? Like, who would come and see it? Other than obviously your friends and family. Then.
Yeah, well, Marcel Dion visited my place quite a few times. The guys from the alumni, because I was involved with them, Mike Pellick and René Robert, all sorts of different people.
It's interesting.
I actually was asked to join the NHL alumni because of my knowledge of hockey.
Yeah, I want to ask you, did that for 15 some odd years?
Pardon?
You did that for about 15 years or so?
Yeah, 15 years. Well,
and the alumni is made up of
retired
hockey players.
Yeah, and they're all from the NHL.
Right.
Some from the WHA now, but it was normally.
So what did you do as a member of the alumni? Did you go to meetings? Did you just hang out with them?
Well, when I worked for the Toronto Maple, I did all their souvenirs for them.
Oh.
I did all the pictures. I brought all the pictures because I had all the pictures.
Right.
And I would get guys like Wendell Clark to come out at halftime, sit with me, and I would tell them, sit here, Wendell, and autograph these pictures. So that was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
And so I got to know all these guys pretty good.
That's great.
They depended on me for all their pictures, for golf tournaments, for old timer games.
Yeah.
And I would just, but I haven't been doing it as much in the last year because my wife passed away.
Right.
And
Sorry.
I'm still getting my fingers into it, but not as much as I did.
So you also created a CD, right? A CD-ROM?
A CD-ROM, yeah.
Of all of your memorabilia?
Yeah, pretty much. It was called the Warwick Encyclopedia of Hockey.
And where's that name come from? Why
Warwick was selling it. And encyclopedia is all.
Okay.
Means all
No,
the
I understand that
players,
part, but I didn't know who Warwick was. I didn't know who they are.
Yeah, Warwick, and we sold it in Kohl's and.
So it's basically something you put in your DVD player, I guess, or whatever, your computer, and you
back
can.
In the day.
It gives you an overview of everything.
It had a picture of every NHL player that ever played from 1917 up, and the people at the Hall of Fame said you'll never ever, but they didn't know me.
Yeah.
They'll never get all the players.
Yeah, but you did.
I spent 3 years of my life, believe it or not, traveling all over North America. I mean, I was paid to do this, and I was on expenses and everything.
Yeah.
And I knocked on the doors of old-time players.
And you got it all together.
And I got every single. And some of the stories about how I got particular players. Some guys played one game in the NHL back in 1923.
Yeah.
I didn't get a picture of them.
Yeah.
Well, I got it.
Good for you.
And also, the CD was about my memorabilia too. And we had it like an attic, and you could go into a door. You would touch the door. The door would open. You would walk into the room virtually.
Right.
And there would be boxes there. You'd touch the box would open, and there would be coins in there. There would be cards.
I've got to take a look at that. I've got to find a copy of that.
Yeah.
That's great. Doug, I'm going to have to cut you short because our time is up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it goes very quickly when it's an interesting topic, and this certainly is. You've made a career of it, so thanks very much for being here. Thank you for watching. Please join us every month to find out the story behind a person right here on Rogers TV.